Hey everyone, welcome back to the Q&A this week. In today's stream, we're going to be talking about the Desert Treasure 2 Greenlights rewards, or Desert Treasure 2 Rewards Greenlight blog, and answering some of the general questions that you might have with Pulse 78 changes still ongoing. Before we get into all of that, we've got a bit of admin work, some announcements to go through. So I'm just going to quickly get you up to date with all the Twitch commands for today. If you type !game update, you'll get a link to this week's game update news post. This week we did a couple of Pulse 78 bits, things like stackable Nightshade, more seeds for birdhouses, spell icon resizing, some changes to the Magic Secateurs, etc. So !game update for that one. If you type !DT2, you'll be whisked away to the rewards blog for Desert Treasure 2, the Greenlight blog. !survey will take you to a survey for forestry. There's maybe too much going on at the same time at the moment, but !survey if you want to give us your thoughts and making sure that your voice is heard for all things forestry, the kind of design of that particular expansion. And if you're not in the loop at all about forestry, !forestry to get a link to the blog for forestry. Before we get into anything else, I am joined tonight by Mod Rock, Mod Other, and Mod Halo. We'll go around the room and we'll see how we're all doing, starting with Mod Rock. How you doing? What you been working on recently?
I don't really work on much apart from like putting the game's updates out, so I don't have projects per se, but recently I've been getting stuff prepped towards what could be the quality of life poll number 79.
Well, you got any teasers, anything you can leak about poll 79?
Yes, actually, I can confirm that the headline of Poll 79, when we come round to it, will be the reworking of the combat achievement system, where we will be converting it from tasks over to the points-based system that everyone keeps asking for.
Oh, I actually didn't know that, so I found out here first as well. That's cool. Mod Other, how about you? I know you've been busy on the 10th birthday event, but how's it been going? And you excited about it?
I am beyond excited, really. It's a week out now, and just, wow, so much really has been packed into this event now, and we've got such sort of a large reward pool that I'm just so excited to see out in the game, really, at this point.
Yeah, we'll have some more questions about the birthday event for Mod Other in just a little bit. And last but definitely not least, Mod Halo, who's been busy working with DT2. How have you been? Specifically, anything you want to give away about DT2? You've been having fun with what you're doing at the moment?
Yeah, it's been great. Just been getting stuck into DT2 design with the other guys, like Mod Ed, Arcane, and Mac. Just been getting stuck in, as I'm sure you know, Goblin. You've been a big part of it as well. Having fun.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm so excited for DT2. I wish I could speak way more about it, but we've got so many blogs to come, and I don't know, it looks really sick so far. But before we talk more about DT2 and the birthday event, I guess we have a sneak peek, which is about the birthday event. I think we have a sneak peek. I'm waiting for the screen to change. Here we go. So next week, we are celebrating our 10th birthday. I have friends with children who are older than Oldschool RuneScape at this point. It's genuinely insane. But Mod Skylark reached out on Twitter for some suggestions for 10th birthday rewards, and we actually have, I think, 10 different rewards to celebrate 10 years. So if you look at the sneak peek, you can see a couple of them here, including, a Gnome Child backpack. There's some Jad slippers, some Bob the Cat slippers. May you rest in peace. There are so many really sick-looking rewards. The cake bucket hat. There are so many just insane rewards from the 10th birthday event. I think it's going to be, it's going to be really fun to just watch everybody zooming about with all of them. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Any particular thing you're most excited for cosmetically from the 10th birthday event?
Just all the Gnome Child backpacks, I think. The game's just going to be riddled with them next week. It's going to be great.
Get it on the merch store.
I unironically think that would bang on the merch store. I think that would be so hard. Just like a really tiny one, But yeah. Anything else before we get into questions, Mod Other?
Well, I mean, it's great to see that we can tease some of the rewards. It's nice knowing that there's actually other rewards that we aren't teasing as well. I'm mostly I keep looking at the Jad plushie. It's actually genuinely made it harder to develop the event because all I want to do is sit there holding the Jad plushie.
He does look
I want to take
polite.
it to Jad. Go play with my dolls, the Jad plushie and Jad himself,
It's a new combat achievement in the making.
Yeah,
Right.
We could do Jad plushie in the offhand all the way through the fight caves.
Why not? I reckon that works. But while we're talking about the 10th birthday, let's fire into some questions about it, specifically for you, Mod Other. It's not your first live stream, obviously. I know you were here a while ago for a Castle Wars event, I think, with
Yeah.
Mod Light and somebody else. Mod Sofan?
I think it was Sofan, yeah.
Either way, this is I think this will be the first time that a lot of people have seen, your work. It's your first project and everything. So what's it been like designing your first project? And I guess a little of what's it been like balancing it being your first project with it being a celebration of 10 years of old school?
It's in some ways it has been absolutely terrifying, because that's 10 years of stuff, and having to work out like, how am I going to sort of do my sort of due diligence in honoring that we've had 10 years of old school whilst making something that manages to feel fresh at the same time. There's been a really fine line, I think, to walk, that hopefully, when people are in and playing that event, they're going to really think back to where they started. That was really a big thing for me, is I wanted to look at, like, where do we start? Where do we all start? What do we all do? And bring that to the event as sort of the heart of it. And yeah, I mean, developing my first actual project has just been a real joy, all in all. And I'm surrounded by people who have done dozens, if I'm sure some of you guys have probably done hundreds of things at this point. So I always feel like I'm in safe hands with this.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. My hot take, I don't usually care about the holiday events, like, personally. There's a lot that I just don't even do, hot take. But this one looks so sick. I play tested it and I'm still excited to go and do it in game. So next week, make sure you get stuck in, get involved. It looks really cool. I guess while putting it together, first project as well, have you encountered any particularly fun bugs yet?
I struggle to think of any. I tended to have a lot of the bugs just beaten out of everything I made quite rapidly. As of yet, I don't think I've managed to break the game, which I'm quite proud of. So yeah, I look forward to running into, like, actually fun bugs rather than, like, oh, here's
Don't
yet
look
another
forward
case
to
needs to be
them.
accounted for. Hey, I like a
Don't
challenge.
manifest that. I guess my third question was a little bit kind of covered in the first one anyway. So we'll jump on. My third question, if you wanted to elaborate any further again, was just how hard was it to try and capture the essence of 10 years in a limited timed birthday event? They're like pretty small events, they don't last forever. Is there any extra pressure, I guess, to try and cram so much into a really short space of time?
I think there was quite a significant pressure up front to come up with a design that really could fit the space that we had. As you say, 10 years, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be in there. Things did get cut because there's only so much we can do in a sort of 2-week lifespan event. But with sort of the reward space as well, we've got Jad slippers, we've got a Jad plushie, we've got a stray dog plushie, the Gnome Child backpack, like, so much that is there to honor some really iconic parts of old school. That was it for me. It was saying, well, what's iconic? What do I want to be highlighting and really drawing players' attention to? And hopefully I've, achieved that.
I reckon so. I hope people really like it. I'm excited. Rock Halo, I guess. You excited? Do you think it's been achieved? Do you feel 10 years has been sufficiently condensed?
Yeah, I think the bit I'm kind of like most excited for the reactions on is the Valador room and kind of
no
like
spoilies.
showcasing. Well, I mean, people ask for us to update it every year, and we kind of haven't, so that's on us. And what's a perfect time as any? So it's kind of like cool, just especially having been here and around for so long, like, and seeing a lot of these projects go from like as just like an idea into release and then kind of being as revered as some of them are, it's just really awesome to see that it's not just a history of my game, it's also like part of my working history as well.
Yeah, to add to that, I think from like playtesting internally, I've done the event a few times now, and it's so good just to see like the story that Mod Others chosen, all the characters, just feels so nostalgic, and that's something you definitely need for the birthday events for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. I maybe covered it a bit. Maybe we're giving too much away, but any teasers you'd like to share about the theme for the event?
Ooh. There's not a huge amount I feel like I could tease. I mean, expect it to be an immense amount of nostalgia bait, really, combined with a little bit of sort of campy, light-hearted spoofery, I think is the best way I can tease the event without actually just revealing the entire plot of it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good enough. I don't know, it's not really old school if it's not a little bit camp, right? But yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's all the questions we had pre-prepared for the birthday stuff, but there will be general questions coming up, so stick around. Sorry that I'm adjusting so much in my chair, like I'm trying to look between two monitors, and then I fidget too much on these and people keep pointing it out. But alright, we're going to move on to, we've tried kind of spreading some DT2 questions between some general ones so that everybody kind of gets a chance to talk rather than just 19 questions about DT2 in a row. But we will start with a question about Desert Treasure 2. Again, a reminder, !DT2 in the chat to read the blog about the reward greenlight stuff. And this one will go to Halo, and maybe I can supplement with some bits here and there. Question is Virtus designed in a way not to devalue Ancestral? Unlike Mage, will the Ancestral be broken down to make upgraded Virtus? If that's the case, what will happen with Twisted Ancestral kits? There's a lot going on in this question, but I guess Halo, just some context on where we're at with Virtus at the moment.
Yeah, no worries. So as it stands, Virtus is currently designed to not be better than Ancestral. It's meant to sit sort of in between Arems and Ancestral. After some like feedback, after the blog went out, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board, rethink the design a bit, and maybe even think like, do the players even want Virtus? Like, would they prefer another weapon or something as an alternate if a sort of mage armor set that was in between Ancestral and Arems doesn't really appeal to them? Maybe we'll go another direction. It does obviously have the niche effect of being way better with ancient magics, but maybe that's too niche. Let us know.
Yeah, I just for some context on this, we'll probably the kind of greenlight poll is meant to go live tomorrow, and we'll probably have some updates in the blog based on like conversations that we've had on your feedback around like Virtus and maybe a little bit of like an identity crisis, I suppose, and the kind of lack of wiggle room there is between Arems and Ancestral, because mage accuracy doesn't matter and there's only like 11 points of accuracy between, and Ancestral gives like 6% mage damage, so there's not much room there, so you might not even gain a max hit, so then does it feel good? And then mage damage in general is just so dominated by the occult, which is what, like 300k and like 10% mage damage, that it makes it difficult to like find that middle room. So I don't know, we've got some thoughts that we'll outline in a blog tomorrow, and we might take a bit of a different approach to questions around Virtus, so keep an eye out for that. But I'm not going to go into all of them right now because we have a whole bunch of stuff to go through. But it's been really interesting reading all of your discussions about it and stuff, and I think there's like a lot of food for thought that we've had within the team. So yeah, that's
sure.
that for Virtus.
I've seen plenty of really cool posts about not only the Virtus designs and stuff, but as we'll get to soon, like the prayers and the weapons and stuff. It's been really cool to see.
There's been I've been trying to note all of them down, and I have like a table which is I think maybe like 40 rows deep for community designed weapons now. So yeah. All right, we'll move on to something a little bit more general, and I suppose you touched on this a little bit earlier, but for Mod Rock, are there any interesting or unique polls, past or future, that you really wish would make their way into the game? I guess maybe that's like qual poll themes or specifics, but up to you.
Yeah, from a personal perspective, what I want to kind of do is try at some point and get a quad poll themed around mini games in particular. I think there's quite a few things and tweaks that we could make to various parts, like Tithe Farm could be a bit more interesting and actually give you rewards based on your time in there rather than having to spend an hour before getting 1 point. But overall, like, the amount of suggestions that basically the team goes through and reads and quantifies everything, there's so many different cool suggestions that people have that we'd like to get out. Like, I'd like to be able to grow Mortmire fungi, which has kind of been put towards a couple of polls in the past, and because of the amount of effort it would take to make that versus the amount of reward it would give, it kind of gets culled pretty early on, and understandably so. It's not like a big ideal, and it is purely like an Iron Man thing, so is what it is. But yeah, I kind of just want to really start digging into qual this year, given how last year went and we kind of spent so long on a singular qual poll, and just deliver a lot more little things that just improve the gameplay that everyone kind of does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I feel that. I'll toss it over to Mod Other as well, I suppose. And now that you've kind of been around for some qual polls and seen what it's like when we move from player suggestions to polling stuff, anything past or future that you'd like to see make its way into the game?
Ooh, I struggle to think of things in the past that I sort of would really just love to throw in unpolled. I would love to see more sort of... I would love to do a series of skilling overhaul polls, to be honest. I think there is a lot of room within skills that we could just poll a whole bunch of ideas and get some feedback on that. And I know we've got the new skill coming, but sometimes it does feel like we actually have neglected older skills. It's perhaps a hot take, but yeah, future polls, like, I need people demanding skilling stuff.
I don't think it's that hot a take. I think, I don't know, I think forestry is kind of looking at woodcutting through that lens and is aware that some skills could maybe be, like, modernized in a way that doesn't, like, take away from the nostalgic elements of them massively, but who knows? I don't know. I was a big fan of RuneScape's mining and smithing rework, but it's not old school, but it was a cool rework. Spicy take, don't come for me. It was a cool rework. I'm not saying we'll do it. I just thought it was cool. Alright, it's another DT2 question, and something that we spoke about a couple of hours before this stream. One for Mod Halo. The question is, are you guys looking into the possibility to use the old DK rings, or Fremenic rings, as an ingredient to the new best-in-slot ring upgrades?
I think this is a viable option for these rings. It provides a good way to sync the current rings and also make them like not dead content. There's a few ways we could go about it. There's quite a few like cool suggestions that I've read about like ripping off the icon of the old rings, like the hammer off the Berserker ring, which I had no idea was actually a hammer until I looked at it close enough. Taking it off, putting it on the new ring to either give it its stats. Maybe it's like not all the stats it takes. Maybe it takes like half of the Berserker ring's strength bonus or something. Yeah, there's definitely different things we could do with the old DK rings and the new ones for sure.
Yeah, I think in tomorrow's little like blog update, we have like a section where we'll probably discuss this, and I think following feedback, we'll probably go ahead with the idea of finding some way to kind of upgrade the old DK's rings. I've got like purely personal and like biased opinions about like Upgradescape or whether or not DKs would be dead content and whether or not they kind of already are, bar the Berserker ring, but I don't want people to flame me, so I don't know, I think it's cool. It seems like players would like to see it, and it does have some like economic benefits, so yeah, keep an eye out in the blog tomorrow, where we'll probably commit to doing that, I think, just because it seems like people want it, and I guess it's nice for, you know, I don't know, that kind of like upgrade and consistent progression thing is nice for some people's kind of player journey, etc. I have another... Oh, yeah, go ahead, Rock.
I was going to say, well, if they're not going to flame you, they might flame me, because I think I have a similar opinion on that, and I think we're going a little bit too much down the road of upgradescape to give it a bit of a thing. I don't think there is an issue with certain things being relatively unused anymore. Like we have plenty of things that are, and if we were to introduce these new rings, depending on where like how the bosses feel, their difficulty, the requirements, etc., to get there, I think given the ease that DKs have and how they can be killed, like they are a valid stepping stone to having a ring and then moving towards a new ring afterwards, given how relatively early they are considered in account progression these days. So I don't think I kind of would like us to skew away from this absolutely has to be used to make this in order to kind of go like keep value with everything. Ultimately, DKs has a bunch of other things that are pretty useful as well. Like as soon as you get the Elite Diary done, you can go camp them for the Noted Bones, which will kind of give you a lot of XP towards your prayer and things like that. There are other uses. So I'd be genuinely curious to kind of see and get a bit more gauging and player information as to whether the upgrade tree is the best way or the more preferred way rather, as opposed to kind of like sprinkling in the fact that some things will ultimately become less valuable, or as people would say, more dead than others, because that's a natural progression. It's a 10-year-old game that's going to happen. You can't protect everything with every single update.
Yeah, I'm personally in like a similar spot, but I don't know, maybe it's something that we'll throw in as like an extra poll question instead, because it seems like Twitch chat has like a wholly different opinion, I guess, to a lot of what I've seen in like other places recently. So I don't know, maybe we just put it to the players, so I'll have to chat with the devs, see what they think ahead of tomorrow's poll.
Sorry to throw that in last minute.
It's not, I mean, it's how I feel as well, right? But we're a community-driven game, and that seems to be overwhelming. But we'll put it to the players, and we'll find out, I suppose. We've got another one for Mod Halo before another general question. Can you clarify freeze and poison penetration and whether each stat would extend to the player? I presume that maybe means for PvP, but just talking a little bit more about exactly what those kind of potential offensive modifiers are and what they do.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I assume that last bit is PvP. But in a nutshell, it basically means that you could potentially freeze or poison an NPC or boss that you couldn't have done previously. So, poison could be extra DPS for a boss that was previously poison immune. You could freeze a boss that you couldn't freeze before. I can't remember if in Grotesque Guardians, like the melee guy, maybe you could freeze so you could avoid the melee attack, like that sort of stuff. Could make for some really interesting gameplay. Obviously, the poison is just more DPS. Unsure if this would apply to players. Not entirely sure. Maybe players want that. Not sure how it would work. So
I don't really understand how it would apply to players, because you can already freeze and poison players, right? So it's more for... So the example that we gave in the news post was like if you had 20% freeze penetration, for example, something like Ice Barrage, which is a 32 tick freeze. If you hit, so you still have to roll mage accuracy and stuff, would freeze for 20% of that, because Oldschool rounds down. 20% of 32 is 6.4, so you'd get like a 6 tick freeze. And I think some people was like, maybe that's not too impactful, etc. We've spoken a little bit more about that in the changes to the blog that we'll probably put out tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know, it was an interesting one to see what people's thoughts were, and like part of the function of these kind of earlier greenlight polls means that we can talk about stuff that's maybe a little bit more out there, and just like if people don't like it, it's fine. Like, but we can try stuff that's like a little bit different and just see how people feel about it, rather than what happened before, maybe where we'd like work on something and be like, you guys like this, and then people say no, and then it was a waste of time. So, yeah. All right. One for the wider team, and we'll start with Mod Other, I think. What is your opinion on making some big item grinds less dependent on RNG by dividing the item into smaller pieces, like the Venator Bow?
Ooh, well, I think there's certainly elements that are huge positives to sort of breaking up the grind into smaller bits, because I think in many ways, you save some frustration in going a year dry or whatever to actually get the drop by getting all the smaller bits. You don't necessarily make it easier per se either, because you've still got to get every single piece. And I think for something like the Venator Bow, it does make a lot of sense. Like, large sort of weapon type items, armors probably should drop in parts, is my opinion on it. But I think smaller things, perhaps, even with high rarity, like, I don't think we should get rings dropping in parts, even if they are, sort of ultra rare drops. And I think it does lead to itself to be more rewarding. I think we made the right choice with the Venator Bow. And I really hope we sort of continue that design going forwards, to be honest.
Yeah, Modrock, any thoughts?
I'm going to say I'm pretty much completely the opposite, in my opinion. I think that the way that the RNG system works of old and having that grind is, for me, kind of like a core part of what old school and what RuneScape is. And I'm generally kind of against the whole things like having in guarantee after X amount of kills, or things that get easier the more kills you do, etc. I kind of find that's not my thing, and I'm very old-fashioned in that kind of sense when it comes to this game. So, like, if it's a 1 in 3,000, if you don't get it in 20,000, shout out Storgy, then such is life.
Oh no.
Yeah, to be a bit of a devil's advocate, to be like a bit of both. Like, I think it's getting the right balance of like what sort of weapon it is, or the Venator Bow isn't a best in slot item, right? It's a fairly niche use item. Whereas, like, if say the Shadow was dropped in parts, like, I feel like the dopamine hit would be so different if like you got parts of the Shadow compared to like the one big Shadow drop. But it kind of works for the Venator Bow because it's not like that big best in slot drop at the end. It's like little like drip fed dopamine, I guess.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I went over 4 times, like more than 4 times over rate for my first Warhammer, and like it sucked, but the elation at getting it was near unparalleled. It felt better than both of my T-bows on the Iron Man. I don't know. For me personally, I think some of the stuff like the pity drop, like Vorkath head and stuff, I think some of that stuff is kind of chill, and I'm a bit more indifferent towards things like the Venator Bow. But I think there's a place for all of them, and I think there was a Reddit thread earlier today that Kieran replied to with some interesting thoughts from like a kind of big design brain perspective. So if you stumble across that post, go check it out. Kieran has some cool thoughts. Some more DT2 questions, in fact 4 in a row. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make Modspear hate me. I'm going to move down to question 10 on our little sheet and ask some general questions first. Question 10, probably one for Rock, I think. With the upcoming change to the Abyssal Dagger special attack, was removing the damage reduction considered to make it better than the Dragon Dagger's special attack?
So I believe it was. However, because I believe this was a near miss question that we repolled, I think the idea was with the near miss, we wanted to kind of repoll exactly what was polled. Otherwise, it kind of defeats a little bit of what the sense was. So basically, a further change to it wouldn't absolutely be off the table. I think there is space for the Abyssal Dagger to go into, for sure. But not as part of what the intentions were with that last poll that we did.
Yeah, I think it's something we could follow up on, right? But yeah, we'll keep that one short and sweet, I think. Do you have more to say, sorry?
No, I was just going to agree with the statement, that was all.
Yeah, sure. Sorry if it feels like I'm rushing, there's a lot of questions. And yeah. Again, for Modrock, does the Magic Secateurs update apply to Herbiboar 2? And if not, could it be?
As in the use from inventory, or the
use from inventory, yeah. As far as I'm aware, it already has an impact on the amount of herbs that you get. I could be wrong. I've not done Herbie in a long time.
I believe it does. However, I could be slightly wrong, so that would probably be something I have to double check, but I would absolutely expect it to. So if it doesn't, it would be a bug that we intend to fix.
Fair. All right. And not one of the fun bugs that Mod Other's looking for, just an annoying one. I'm sorry about that. All right. We'll knock out some DT2 questions, hopefully quickly-ish. We'll see, because they're kind of meaty. So, for Mod Halo, what is the general design philosophy the team is using when coming up with new prayer ideas for the Ruinous Powers? And what sort of direction or feel do you all want the prayer book to bring to the game?
Well, that is some question. I think one core part of our design philosophy, if I could speak, is basically not making the original prayer book obsolete as a big one. We see the issues with the current prayer book. I can't remember the numbers, but I think overall players only use about 8 of them. Like some of them are just not used at all that sort of thing. We kind of want to solve with this prayer book. We want to make each prayer feel like it has a good use in a part of the game, and not one that's just never used. I think a good direction that we could go in is, like I think we mentioned in the blog, like having a good trade-off for this prayer book as opposed to the normal prayer book. There's a few examples in the blog as well. Like maybe there's a prayer that protects, 100% melee, but you take, 80% more damage or something. So if you miss a prey flick, you're gonna, take more damage or whatever. I think that's a good direction we could go in. Kind of fits into the whole like cursey Ruinous Powers feel of it as well. I know there's a lot of feedback.
They're not those.
They're not those. There was some feedback yesterday about a lot of players want them to be combat focused. Kind of makes sense. Definitely makes combat more interesting if we focus more on combat. But we could also do some skilling ones as well. Even if it's just a couple. I think that'd be a good direction. You got any more thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, all right. The Uno reverse card on the host. Yeah, some. I thought the skilling prayer one was kind of interesting because, oh my god, I wheeled into my table. I thought the skilling prayer one was cool because I think a lot of people said it didn't really feel thematic, and I guess they're called the Ruinous Powers, but also, like, the whole thing is that, like, the Zoroastrian Empire back in the day covered, like, most of the map. And they weren't just like warmongers, they were like architects, scientists, researchers, etc. I think it makes some thematic sense for there to be some stuff that makes skilling like a little bit more interesting, even though I think the overall theming is combat stuff. And we've seen so much cool stuff from player suggestions. There's a lot of people talking about like low life stuff, a lot of people talking about recoil effects or like thorn style things. A lot of people talk like touching run energy or like tribrid prayers for people that are maybe less good at offensive switches, but want to get something without having to like switch what they're learning. I think there's a lot that we could do, and we've seen so many suggestions, but it's cool to see there are like common threads coming throughout them, I guess, because it makes it a little bit easier to zero in on what's obviously important to players, and then maybe supplement that with some of the weird, goofy, gimmicky stuff in between to just add some like flavor to the book, I think. I don't know. I'm excited to see where we wind up.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess another question about the prayers, all for you, is how are they meant to be unlocked? Are they solely a reward from completing the quest, drops from bosses, or a combination of the two?
I think as a sort of baseline, you'll get the book as a whole from the quest. Unsure really at the moment how this will be activated. Probably similar to that of like changing spellbook, with an altar of some kind. I think a quick win or like a pretty good way to get like the high level prayers would be from the bosses, kind of like the arcane scroll, the deck scroll from raids. I think it just would make sense to lock those prayers behind bosses. But if players don't want that, or maybe they do want that, we'll have to figure that one out. I think it'd be basically a combination. Majority will be unlocked with the quest, and then more will be unlocked with content from the quest.
Yeah, for the benefit of people listening, we'll have like a dedicated blog to the Ruinous Powers, I think 2-ish weeks from now, I think is when I'm meant to have finished it by, so fingers crossed. But I guess, I don't know, you could Rock, other any input on prayers as drops from bosses and things like that?
I think we suffered a little bit when we did it from Chambers, because I remember the thing that we had when we released Chambers of Xeric is that we had the prayers, and the prayers were at least 10 times rarer than they currently are now. And when we launched them, there was hundreds upon thousands of complaints of, oh my god, these are too rare. And then look at it now, you've got hundreds and thousands of complaints that these are too common. It's you have to be very kind of careful in this kind of aspect. But I think having a good mixture of that, some come from the quest and you can unlock them in certain ways. Like, I really like the idea of having some prayers locked behind some of the bosses, whether that's in terms of drops or getting a kill count or interacting with the content to say that, like, you have consumed the essence of the being that you're killing to gain more power, etc., and things like that. But all in all, what I'd love is an upgrade to the play-around house prayer altar that we can put in somehow to give the prayer room a little bit of a pizzazz feel in order to be able to switch prayer books on a much lower down op so people can still train their prayer, kind of like we have with the cursed altar, etc.
Yeah, I think the POH could use a buff, to be fair.
Don't get me started, please.
And just quickly, Mod Other, I know you've been playing on like 3 accounts at once right now. How would you feel about getting new prayers on all 3 of them?
I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't mind, as long as I think prayer unlocks should be. I'm not a huge fan of just a couple of scrolls in Chambers of Xeric. I'm big fan of Rock's idea of just literally even just like a kill count or 5 KC or something. So it's not RNG, and it is relevant to the prayer you unlock. So, if we end up putting skilling prayers in, let's have some way, like, if we're going to lock them, let's have a skilling way to unlock them. If we're putting in, like, PVM prayers or PvP prayers, let's have combat-focused ways to unlock them. I think making them relevant gives them a lot more flavor as well. Like, yeah, most of the time you'll only think about the uses, but there's an enjoyment in unlocking things, and I think that is improved when you're unlocking it in a way that really feels right.
Yeah, I think it just feels good to get stuff, and permanent unlocks always feel good, right? Like, whether you're an iron or a main, like unlocking something like Rigor and watching range just become absolutely insane is, a feeling that's not easily beat. We'll circle back to Halo for our next question. Is the community responsible for the entirety of the Ruinous Powers, or does the team already have some of their own ideas that will be implemented in addition to community-made ones? I don't know why I spoke so weird at the end there, but,
That's all right. So we have made some, or we've come up with some, I should say, internally. Some that the players have already suggested to us, which is quite nice to see. I know Mod Bruno has been working quite hard on it as well. I'm hoping we can get a nice mix of our own ideas internally with the community's ideas, or like some hybrid ones. Obviously, at the end of the day, the players are going to want to have their say on whether they want to use them or not. So getting a lot of the community's input would be really good with this. I know we've got is it the hashtag on Twitter to submit designs? I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, it's hashtag DT2 community design, I think.
Yeah, just using.
I think, as if I've not been looking at it, but I'm pretty sure that's the one.
Nice. Yeah, just using that, just sending your ideas that way, or @ing me on Twitter, or. But yeah, I hope as a team we can get a mix of the two, I should say.
Yeah, I think a mix, and it's been quite validating to see some of our early ideas also be things that I guess come up quite a lot in player suggestions. So I don't know, things like recoils and things touching run energy and stuff like that. It's just been good to see that we're not wildly off base. All right, I think this next one's a GT2 question, but I think we'll all have thoughts on it. Are there any thoughts on making any of the post-quest boss variants able to be killed as a group? Appreciate that some mechanics may become trivial in a group setting. I'll start with Halo, and then we'll move on to Other, and then Rock, just to gauge thoughts, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah. So as a team, we've discussed this. Like, this has come up before. We haven't really come to a decision yet. We're still ironing out the boss designs. We kind of don't want to feel like we have to shove like a group mechanic into the bosses. We want them to feel really good in a solo, and then maybe expand on that. It's something that has come up, and we haven't really decided on it. Even if it's just like duo one of the bosses, that might be an option. But I don't think it's high on the priority list for now. But it is in the back of our minds for sure.
Yeah. Other thoughts on potentially post-quest groupable bosses or small team even?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the idea, to be honest. I think it's exciting to consider having, what would be traditionally solo bosses be something that could become group content. But, I agree with Halo in that, as quest bosses, I think they really should be designed around being a sort of bespoke solo experience more than something that is set up such that, we can easily say, hey, bring a friend to farm this boss. That certainly should be a lower priority, I think. But more group bosses in general, throw them in.
Please. And Rock, quickly, thoughts?
I think I'm kind of like a mixture of how everyone feels. Like, my favorite bosses are things like Corp, where you can kind of go chill out with your mates and stuff like that in a group environment, as opposed to how you solo Corp. But for quests, I feel like they have to be solo, but then there's nothing to say that in the post DT2 we kind of essentially have a gauntlet where you're running all the bosses as a group and things like that, and kind of creating a cool, funky way to be able to incorporate things like that. They've both got their places in game, so could do either, really.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to find formula that works, because it's quite cool. I think that quests now kind of introduce elements of PvM, but obviously questing is so solo tailored in Old School, whereas in other MMOs I don't know, WoW or Lost Ark, you can party up and you can kind of progress at the same time. But in Old School, obviously quests are a solely solo experience, so maybe it'd be cool to think about ways we can still deliver on good solo experiences, and then still make them groupable afterwards, because it's an MMO at the end of the day, right? It's more fun to do stuff with friends than solo for some people. But I think we should just, I don't know, it'd be nice to get better at affording players that option, Alright, next question. Sorry, I got distracted by somebody in chat. I'm not going to play your riff.
Can I jump in with a question that's kind of been going on in the chat for the last 45 minutes?
If it's about Barbarian Assault, I was going to get to
actually.
it. You can. Yeah, go ahead.
I kind of just want to jump in. So we do know that there is still issues with the content. I believe the issue that's specifically plaguing at the moment with the healers is more related to an engine change that we have made. Engine changes do unfortunately take a little bit longer for us to get out than content changes do, but rest assured we haven't forgotten. We are still working on it, and we're looking to kind of get that out as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah, so it's due a fix, we're aware of it, but it's not a content side fix, so whenever we get an engine change, then hopefully it should be fixed, and if not, panic, but fingers crossed. For the person in chat, that is a Fender Telecaster from their 2020 Players Series. Anyway, next question, one for Halo. Will the resources dropped from the new repeatable bosses be as abundant as Phantom Muspah? Following the release of Secrets to the North and the drop rate changes, it seems like there is a lot of incentive to fight the boss purely for the resources, and less so for the unique items.
Ooh, that's a good question. Drop tables are fun. I think with all these new bosses, we've obviously shown some of the reward designs. And there's quite a lot of them if you think about it. Think if each boss drops a prayer scroll or something. Each boss drops a piece of I've forgotten the name of the mage armor already. And the weapon pieces as well. That's already what, 3-4 uniques per boss, even the rings as well. I feel like that's gonna bulk out the drop table quite a bit. I think as a team, we're still sort of like gauging drop tables as a whole, and I think we probably should do a better job of it with these bosses. I'm hoping we can sort of do a lot of iteration on it and hopefully nail it for launch. That'll be the aim for us.
Yeah, I think there's enough going on that, like, I think we could end up at like a nightmare-esque table without it feeling too bad. But again, the more different approaches we take, the better we get at figuring out what works for certain content and stuff. So I'm optimistic, but I think there are enough like good uniques that I don't imagine it would wind up looking the same as Muspah, to be honest. I could be wrong, but I don't get that sense from the team. Right, next question, a quick one. Will there be a defense requirement to complete Desert Treasure 2? If not, are you envisioning many defense requirements for the Ruinous Powers? I think the quick answer is just no.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, alright, sweet. Some more general questions which may be slightly trickier to answer, but I'll throw them Rock's way, maybe he'll have some context, I think. Would it be possible to reorder the 200 mil ranks on the Account Build HiScores based on the ranks on the normal HiScores so that they're ranked in the order they achieved 200 mil?
So our HiScores are very unique, is probably the word I would describe them. They're also not handled and modified by the development team. They are more handled by the I think they call the platform team that deals with things like web, etc. But to say we have heard the calls to want this change, but ultimately, unfortunately, it's going to take us a little bit of investigation into what we can do and when we have the time to do it, because ultimately the new HiScores we entered work like every other HiScores do, and they're not necessarily great at being able to take massive modifications at the moment, which is kind of why we never really got HiScores for the speedrun times to count from like the fastest time to the slower times, etc. So it's not as easy as I wish it was. So unfortunately, until further notice, they will have to remain as they are.
Yeah, just to we're aware of it. Similarly, I see somebody in chat mentioning the singles wieldy bosses, so RTO, Calvarion, and Spindle on HiScores. I think that is coming. So keep an eye out, I suppose. I'm gonna skip a question in the interest of time and jump back my throat again to Mod Halo. Are there plans to make at least one of the 4 bosses really difficult? People may struggle a bit on Dragon Slayer 2's final boss, Galvek, or Song of the Elves, but I'm talking about Sins of the Father level boss difficulty here. This is a new prayer book, so we should be made to really work for it.
Yeah, I think as a team we want these bosses to be hard. Maybe not one of them harder than the rest of them. We'd like them to be quite equally hard, but maybe harder in different ways, like mechanical ways. Maybe one fight is harder with movement, the other is hard with prey flicking and whatnot, gear management, all that sort of thing. As I think a sort of guide would be that each of the bosses is probably going to be at the level of Galvek, probably harder, but this could all change. And obviously it might not one-shot you like Galvek does, it might one-shot you.
Ooh, one shots. I'll say for people in chat as well, I just read the questions. I don't know if it was like worded wrong or maybe we copied something over wrong. I just read the questions, don't shoot the messenger on the Sins the Father thing. I think with there being like 4 bosses as well, like that have different identities, there are things that people are going to be better at and things that people are going to be worse at. So I think naturally there are probably some that you'll struggle with more. Even though if you were like a perfectly well-rounded player, you'd maybe, I don't know, you'd maybe find all of them equal. Mod, are there any thoughts on whether or not you'd like one of them to be particularly difficult? I know in the blog we wrote potentially our toughest post-quest encounters of all time, but maybe even the quest variant. What do you reckon?
I mean, I full support anything that like a quest boss that you can't really just walk in with a generic setup and clear first try. I think like introducing elements to it to make it harder, make it something worth learning. You know, Muspah, for example, like I cleared that in the quest with really the worst setup I probably could have brought for it in the end, because I just walked in blind, and I thought that was a lot of fun, and I probably shouldn't have ended up clearing it the way I did. And there were things, you know, there was a lot to learn to it to then go back to it post quest, and I think we can bring that learning forwards. We can bring that learning to the quest itself. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be through, like, just making bosses into a giant stat stick with a huge amount of health that just punish mistakes. And, yeah, there's a lot of room if we say, yeah, let's make harder bosses. There's a lot of room to do interesting things with that.
Yeah, completely agree. We got 9 minutes left. We got 3 questions left, and then probably looking at some community out submissions. I believe in us. This might be the first time we've gotten through all the questions. Mod Rock, I don't know why I'm not blaming you. Why is Dragon Scale Dust still unbuyable from Nightmare Zone for Ironmen? Explain yourself.
Explain myself. Because you should go and pick it up off the floor. I do believe that we should perhaps have a way to do it, but Nightmare Zone would not be the way that it comes from, and I wouldn't do it in a way that is like easy, like use knife on blue dragon hide kind of stuff. I'd like to see an engaging way of getting it, but if we go near Nightmare Zone for anything, I would hope it would be to delete it.
Wow. I'm telling Ash.
You asked.
Yeah, okay, fair.
Fair enough.
I think I'll say ever since, because with Nightshade with Pole 78, we made it like a bit easier to harvest and pointed out that it wasn't particularly fun to just hop around and pick it up off the floor. I think we have something on the player suggestion sheet for next Monday to maybe discuss again the idea of maybe scraping some scales off of like blue dragon hide even. Maybe it's something that like scales with crafting quite intensely, so there's a chance you just get none, because I think there's like a concern maybe that depending on like a fixed value, you just like tie their value entirely to blue D-hide, which is tied to alks, and that's a bit not very interesting either, but who knows. But we're aware that I guess blue dragon scales are not fun to pick up, nor is that kind of gameplay particularly fun anyway, and maybe you can come up with something a bit more exciting. On the flip side, nor is Nightmare Zone particularly fun. But like, I guess that kind of ties into the next question. What can we expect when it comes to player suggestions for the future?
So Poll 79, obviously I announced at the beginning that the main thing that we're going to be looking at for Poll 79 when it comes to it is the reworking of the combat achievements into a points-based system. Alongside that, we would like to kind of take a look at things that we haven't necessarily done anything to do with recently. So I think we'd like to kind of take a look a little bit towards things like raids, etc. But basically what happens is we pick a theme for a poll that kind of fits in and around our schedule, that either we haven't done it for a while or we are about to do it so it can supplement the content that's coming. But we literally go through dozens of suggestions from players every week that people from the team find and like and enjoy, and decide whether it goes into our backlog or not and things like that. So I'm hoping this year that ultimately we can deliver many more times of player suggestions and quality of life updates than we'd have done previously.
Yeah. Any thoughts from everybody else? I know that you guys tend to attend the player suggestions meets that we have every week. Starting with Mod Other, you made a face.
There seems to be a lot that goes on in the player suggestions meetings, to be honest. And in recent weeks, a lot of it's just gone by me, unfortunately. So I can't necessarily talk a huge amount about the suggestions. The face was absolutely me trying to remember, have I remembered any player suggestions?
Did you manage?
No.
All right. Halo, quickly.
Yeah, there's a few
Salvage it,
really
please.
cool. There's some really cool suggestions coming up that are like, oh, they're just game changing. I'm not going to spoil what they are.
Are they? Wait, I'm opening the spreadsheet.
Well, not, more life changing for people that rage.
Hyping up my
buy a
pop
lot.
qual so I can't deliver them properly. Cheers, Halo.
To be fair, some of them range from like really exciting to like some of them were something that I put on today about because we made the change recently to be able to get multiple Natus Knot and Dwarven Helms, and I saw some people asking for the same treatment to be given to Lunar Rings and Beacon Rings, which I imagine we'll probably do, so I don't mind leaking that we'll talk about it. If we don't do it, then I've let you guys down. I didn't fight hard enough. I'm sure it's not that deep.
I think the main thing I kind of want people to realize is that the player suggestions meetings we have every week are things that are related to much smaller pieces of content because they're mainly built for the quality of life team. So we can try and deliver a lot of that throughout the year. So we know that there are absolutely massive suggestions and amazing suggestions that come from players across varying medias. But the kind of like week to week stuff is discusses things that we can kind of go, okay, this is something, it's relatively high impact but relatively low work. So like when can we get it and when can we put it out into a poll, etc.
Yeah, completely agree.
There's some chunky stuff on that spreadsheet.
Yeah, I've just seen people in the chat asking for one that I'm going to add right now. I'm just going to make a note of myself. Draken's Medallion hoodie. There we go. Yeah, hopefully it happens. If not, sorry.
Simple as that.
But I'm sure it'll be fine. Last question. If Modspear is angry at me, speak into my ears now if you want me to rush. But last question, real quick. We'll throw it open and we'll start with Rock. What are your thoughts on repolling Amylase Packs or Marks of Grace to Hallowed Sepulchre?
Sepulchre's good enough already. No, I don't think it needs it whatsoever. Sepulchre does a lot of things good already, and that's mainly kind of like player interaction and giving you a fun way of training agility. If you want Amylase, go run laps. Sorry, or we find another cool way of doing it. But I think ultimately, if we make Amylase come from other areas, then rooftops are absolutely dead. Whether that's fine or not isn't necessarily up for me to decide. But Amylase from Sepulchre for me is a definite no.
I'm biased because I just hate rooftops. I think Brimhaven Agility Dungeon's more interesting. I'd like to see them come from more places, but maybe not Sepulchre. I don't know.
I'd go for Brimhaven over Sepulchre every day. But I just don't think Sepulchre needs anything more added to it to make it even better than it already is.
Halo, other any controversial, based or cringe takes about Marks of Grace for Hallowed Sepulchre?
I think personally there might be a good balance that we could achieve in that maybe from Sepulchre it's not optimal by any means to get Amylase, you're just getting them passively. Whereas rooftops it's like super optimal to get them. Like that might be a nice balance. Yeah, not sure.
Finish us off with a really controversial take. Just say the most insane thing imaginable, even if it's not your opinion. Drive the engagement.
High rarity single drop of like one Amylase crystal occasionally in the Sepulchre, and completely overhaul rooftops such that they're more like running through Mire Ditch for all those quests. Nice, complex, hard to follow routes,
If rooftops had Sepulchre traps.
Like what?
I mean, yeah. Have we ever actually done any upkeep on the rooftops? They could be rotted through.
Enchanted
we have
and stuff, just launching socks at you and things like that. Like.
Yeah, like you're running across my rooftops, I'm gonna throw my arrows at you. Dodge them. Yeah, it's an odd one. I honestly get the request, and as much as I don't like it, I think if we could do it another way to kind of keep rooftops in a position where it is, like Halo said, but find another engaging way that isn't necessarily Sepulchre in order to get them, then I think we should go for that route instead.
Yeah, I feel that. Just to clarify, I literally deliberately asked Mod Other for the most insane take. If you're reading the transcript, please do not just flame her all over the internet. Thank you for the content. I think that is literally every question that we had. It's 6 o'clock, and we have a couple of little bits to show off. So before we finish up, we've got some player creations of the week to show off. Let's check those out. And these sections are usually really quiet, so let's gas them up. We have got some Valentine's Day things made by Escaper for their husband, I think, on an Oldschool RuneScape themed scavenger hunt for Valentine's Day.
Speak of marks of grace.
Speaking of marks, I've got my cam in the way, so I can't see what it says. Alright, these are really cheesy, actually. These are really sweet for Valentine's Day. What I did from Valentine's Day was came home from work stressed and upset, and then went to bed.
Oh, no.
Anybody do anything fun for Valentine's Day?
I didn't have a Valentine, so if anyone wants to apply, you know what my Twitter is.
I'll be your Valentine's frog.
Aww.
We'll see. Taking applications. Fill one in.
Up next, we've got some pixel art with an Oldschool RuneScape and Pokemon mashup consisting of 8-bit Graceful, topical, and Giant Squirrel, also topical. I love this kind of stuff. I love the
So cool.
I think this is sick. I love the I can't remember the name of the person who's working on like a homebrew Pokemon thing, like RuneScape themed stuff, like Pokescape. But it looks so cool. I love all the crossovers, even with like Sofan's Bingo, that she did a while ago. Like, I don't know, these seem to cross over an awful lot, and I think every time it's something cool. Yeah. Alright, we'll move on to the next one, which is part 4 of Peepo Plays RuneScape from the very talented Witchcrafties. Peepo going fishing. What do we reckon?
What I'd like to say
we've all
is,
been keeping up to date.
Can Witchcrafty leave some talent for the rest of us? Like, the amount of things that she can do is absolutely ridiculous, and every time Peepo Plays RuneScape comes out, it just goes to the moon.
We just need like a full-on Peepo comic at this point, like hardback.
I want to do Peepo Goes to Bounty Hunter. I want to see him lose his innocence slowly. Anyway, up next, we've got some stained glass of a Guthix Max Cape. This is so cool. I don't know. I know nothing about stained glass, but it sounds really complicated and scary. Does anyone know anything about stained glass?
This glass
It's
stained.
It's...
No idea.
We're such a cultured bunch. I think that's sick, though. I think that's really cool. And finally, we have a knitted Chompy Chick to celebrate this player getting it in game. I guess you can see it in that. This is such an artfully constructed screenshot. I think the brand representation for the monitor, the depth of field with the blurred out Chompy in the background. This is artful. This is really good.
It's Mr. Long from the Guns Chili videos.
Oh yeah.
I think that is all that we had, so I will quickly run back over the commands and stuff so that you can spam them all in chat before we head out. Again, exclamation mark game update if you missed yesterday's game update. It's a bunch of Pulse 78 stuff. Things like rune pouch changes, Magic Secateurs changes, filling up the birdhouse with more stuff, being able to stack Nightshade if you care about Poison Dynamite, a bunch of stuff like that. You can hit exclamation mark DT2 for the rewards Greenlight blog for Desert Treasure 2. Reminder again that we will be updating that tomorrow morning ahead of the Greenlight poll for Desert Treasure 2 stuff. So feel free to check it out now, but check it out again before you go and vote, because we'll have some thoughts to share with you all tomorrow. Exclamation mark survey if you've not yet filled out the survey all about the forestry expansion. So check out the blog, which you can access with exclamation mark forestry. And then after you've read the blog, again, exclamation mark forestry, you can type exclamation mark survey to fill out the survey after having read the blog. I think that was all the announcements that I had. Again, next week, 10th birthday event made by Mod Other. Her first project is really cool. I'm super excited to see it happen. Also, this weekend, Saturday, Gillinor Games finale, I think, on Soup's YouTube channel. So go check that out. Anything from anybody else before we head out?
Thank you very much for hosting, Goblin. It's been great.
I get so nervous doing these. I hate hosting. I like just giving spicy takes about the game and then leaving, but yeah, thanks for coming along. Thanks for answering all the questions that you did. And if you're watching home, thanks for listening. See you guys next week for a stream dedicated to the 10th birthday. I won't give away any more, but it'll be a bit of a special one. Peace.